everyone. Welcome to the Southeast Public Library Board of Trustees meeting. I hereby call to order the December 8th special meeting of the Hamilton East Public Library Board of Trustees. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda? Okay, not seeing any changes. I'd like for us all to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, you threw the candy around.
So I just had a couple of comments just so that the public is aware of how this meeting will proceed. At this meeting, there will be two opportunities for public comment. The first opportunity will be during the first preliminary determination hearing regarding the financing of the project. If you've signed up to speak, you will have up to 3 minutes to comment on this topic only. The second opportunity will be after the salary schedule presentation. At this time, we will allow only 30 minutes of comments, which is stated in our board meeting information and guideline policy. We are limiting the time to 2 minutes for each person so that we can hear from as many as possible. We will have a longer period of time at our December 15th meeting. Please keep your comments respectful. Do not address any board member individually. You are speaking to the entire board and will not disparage our board members nor use raised voices or ask for someone to be removed from the board. This is a business meeting that's held in public, and we respect your cooperation to proceed without unseemly behavior or you'd be asked to leave. Our guest speakers will be allowed the same courtesy. Okay. Now we will start with the first preliminary determination hearing. The first item on the agenda is for the public, is for the board to hold a preliminary hearing on the Fishers project. If you're interested in speaking at the hearing, please make sure that you've signed in the sign-up sheet that was over here at the side. And you should have claimed your name and address. After presentation by the administration and its advisors, there will be an opportunity for the public to make comments, which I just explained. At the hearing, we will ask each person to limit their comments to 3 minutes on this topic of the Fishers Library project. Notice of the preliminary determination hearing was published legally as legally required. At this time, I'll ask that the library attorney and Poindexter explain the purpose of this hearing.
Thank you. Indiana Code 6-1.1-20-3.5 requires a library to hold 2 public hearings and adopt a resolution to preliminarily determine the financing of any project which has a total project cost in excess of a non-controlled project. Begs the question of what a non-controlled project is. And a non-controlled project, at least for 2022, under the statute, is defined as something with a limit of $5,815,000 and some odd amount after that. The library is not in this instance considering issuing additional bonds beyond what they previously did for the projects. The issue is that they've had additional construction costs, which I think people generally understand given the climate that we've been operating in. The library has additional funds, but without going through this determination project, process, they cannot spend those additional funds. And so that is the purpose, to go through this process and then determine if they desire to open up additional funds to pay the excess project costs.
Okay. We will now hear from the director about the process of determining and communicating Fisher's Library project to the community and the need for the Fisher's Library project.
Thank you, Laura. Improvements and renovations were planned and begun in 2021 to address our aging buildings needs and to position the Fishers and Noblesville libraries to continue to efficiently and effectively serve our rapidly expanding communities over the next 2 decades. In preparation for this anticipated maintenance and renovation work, a facilities assessment was completed for each branch library in February of 2019. The purpose of the assessments was to identify a scope of work needed at each location and to determine a conceptual cost estimate to support a planned approach to ongoing projects. After a series of advertised public hearings and other required legal steps, including publication of notices, hearings, and resolutions, bonds were issued by the library to pay for this scope of work. Construction on the Fishers project began in 2021 with phase 1, which is now estimated to be completed in mid to late 2023. Due to circumstances beyond the library's control, such as supply chain issues and inflation, the cost to fully complete both phase 1 and phase 2 of the Fishers project as planned has increased. The library would like to utilize existing library reserve funds to fully complete this project to best serve the Fishers community without issuing any new bonds or increasing taxpayer costs. The library is holding this hearing for the purpose of transparency and to communicate to the public this additional cost, which will be covered by the library's existing funds.
We will now hear from the architect, Kevin McCurdy, about how the proposed Fishers Library project meets the needs as described by the director.
Thank you, Board. The Fishers Library is located on the municipal complex of the city of Fishers. Development in the area has fundamentally changed the way that the community needs to access the library and its services. The Fishers project focuses on redesigning access to the library, including from the planned nickel plate trail, as well as existing municipal complex sidewalks. Expanding parking availability is a high priority, and as the available space for this expansion on the north side of the building, reconfiguring the building entry is required, along with internal reconfigurations and replacement of end-of-life equipment, furniture, and fixtures. The roof is in need of full replacement, which is underway. Phase 1 work of these improvements is currently underway, with phase 2 anticipated to begin in 2023. The supply chain issues, workforce stressors, and inflation have affected the construction industry. We estimate the cost of completion of both phases to be approximately $900,000 more than anticipated, with final completion in mid to late 2023.
Okay. We will now, let's see. Detailed financial information was presented at the original 2020 hearings prior to bonds being issued and remains unchanged. No additional bonds will be issued to fully complete this project. We will now open the public hearing. Remember, if you would like to speak, please sign in on the sheets that were indicated. And that you are speaking relating to this topic only. Is there anyone that wishes to speak? Okay. Seeing that no one is wanting to speak, we thank you all who have participated in the hearing. We appreciate your time and interest in the Fishers Library project and the future of our community. No board action is legally required at this hearing. Rather, this hearing is solely to hear public comment. The board will continue to work with the administration and its professionals to look for efficiencies to conserve tax dollars while meeting our needs. The board will hold a second public hearing in the center meeting room in the Fishers Library on December 15th, 2020 at 4:15 p.m. I will now close the public hearing. Okay, next up on the agenda is the salary schedule and compensation implementation plan discussion. The library's Director of Human Resources is here to discuss the recent compensation study recommendations and implementation plan options. Representative of HR consultant, and FT is also here to answer questions as well.
Hi, my name is John Schmita. I am the Director of Human Resources at HEPL. I appreciate the board letting me give me a chance to speak today. I'm going to touch on some topics that were brought up at the Finance Committee meeting in September. And I'd like to address obviously the NFP benchmark salary schedule for 2023, as well as a 2 to 3 year phased implementation plan for our salary increases. I am joined today via Zoom from Megan Nail. She is the Vice President of Talent Rewards. She is from our consultant for the salary project, NFP. So I'll go ahead and if you look to the left, you'll see the PowerPoint, which I'm going to address the issues that, I should say, topics that were brought up in September.
We turn the lights off for this.
Think you they all go on?
Yeah.
It's all or nothing. Do you want them on?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We're going to turn the lights off so we can all see the screen better. There we go.
Megan does that.
So our year one priority is to bring up all our employees to the minimum of the proposed 2023 salary range. I believe all board members have received a copy of the salary schedule. These salary ranges were developed from NFP based on market data regarding organizations within our industry, which would be like education, not-for-profits, other libraries, geography, central Indiana, for instance, operating budget and headcount. What NFP came up with was that we needed to address positions that were similar to the ones that are listed in the salary structure and bring up those employees who are under the minimum range to the minimum range at this point. It does a couple things. It ensures comparable pay among employees who are doing similar tasks and duties, and also it addresses compensation for what market data is showing. This is important. I know this sounds anecdotal, but it does keep HEPL competitive for recruiting and retention. And we can actually use a real example for the recruiting aspect. One of the positions that was looked at is our CFO position. And I don't know if the board is all aware, but our CFO, Shelley, is going to be leaving us in February, unfortunately. And when we had this position available a year ago, we had a lot of trouble recruiting for it. The salary for the position was a lot lower than the market was telling us. So I think what we feel at this time is it's imperative that we have the 2023 salary schedule approved for January. This would obviously help with the employees who are below the range, and hopefully we'll be able to retain them, but also we'll issue like for recruiting. It's not easy to find a CFO that pays $60,000 a year, private or public sector. So we need to be competitive in that market. So this is just one example of why the salary increases are so important at this time. So in addition to that, another topic that was brought up during the Finance September board meeting was a 2 to 3 year phased-in implementation plan to narrow the compensation gap of employees that are furthest away from the midpoint of the range for someone commensurate experience and skills. And it also ties in with the third point, which was a plan for a merit implementation for performance reviews and salary. So my next slide, this is one option that we've come up with so far, and this addresses both issues of moving our employees closer to the mid-range and also incorporating performance. Sorry. So what we devised was what's called a merit matrix, and I'm just going to give you a brief explanation of what that is. It would be something we would need to develop in 2023 for a 2024 implementation, and this would be a first-year priority for the salary increases. So what we would do is we would take our projected overall increased budget, and then you would take a position within a salary range, for instance, the librarian, and then we would take the job performance from the performance evaluation forms, and we would look at the measured reviewed score to come up with the employee's increase. Now, how this is determined is when you use the two factors together, which are the position and the job performance, the way the metrics are for this, it would allow the highest performers who are lowest in the salary range to receive the largest increase, thus bringing them closer to the mid-range. And it all actually fights off the compression as well. So you obviously compared to others in the same position within the salary range, those with the higher review scores would receive a higher increase. And we would use this metric or matrix, I should say, to allocate our overall budget fairly and consistently. I'm going to show you what this metrics would look like, or the matrix, I should say. This is just an example. This is not our data. The annual salary and the merit budget are not ours. This is for an annual merit increased budget of 3%. And you'll see on the left column is the increase is based on the separate appraisal ratings. Now, this is just an example. This is not technically what we will do. This is something we would build with NFP to determine the appraisal ratings that would align with our performance reviews. Also, if you look at the top, what it kind of blends with would be the comp ratio to the mid-range. So what it does is it takes the employees that are furthest away from the mid-range, and they would be eligible for a larger increase, thus making our employees furthest away from the mid-range get to the mid-range faster. And then conversely, those who are over the mid-range would receive less increases at that time. So this is just an example of what the matrix would look like. But like I said, we would implement that with NFP based on what we decide to do with the performance reviews. Now that was one option. A second option we can consider is our continued practice of what we've done the past several years of just general across the board increases for all employees. This practice is currently used for the City of Fishers, Carmel Clay Library, Westfield Library, and there's a few other libraries, but it's a practice where you can move people on the range, but it doesn't address the performance aspect. And that's what we're trying to look at. And the third option is a combination of the two, which would be obviously performance-based increases and across the board increases for employees. So taking the budget and splitting the two. So that's what we've kind of been looking at. We would always entertain more options though. Then the next priority would be, this would be after year 3, after we implement our merit matrix, would be to always keep reviewing our salary ranges, keep them current to address the market and economic trends. And a practice to do this would be to look at your increased budget for the year, which in this example, we use like 6%, but we would also want to increase the salary ranges to keep current. And they would lag behind the increased budget by a couple percentage points typically. And that would prevent compression for increases, but would also address the market for new hires and retaining talent and all that stuff. So that's kind of what we're looking at this point. What we're mainly focused on today is getting the 2023 salary schedule approved. The data really reflects that this is what we should be paying our employees at the very least right at this moment. So that's what we're looking for. I know it's going to be looked at the board meeting on December 15th. So hopefully we'll get through this. So at this time, that's all I have. Is there anything you wanted to add, Megan?
No, I'm just supporting that we did go through a very thorough market benchmarking process. Can you hear me? To support what new ranges are. And then the other work, John and I have collaborated on this, and this follows compensation best practices and what's going on in the market we're in right now.
And you were in agreement that this should be done, the salary structure should go into place effective immediately. We did budget for it, so.
Yes, just because of the pressures right now in the market on salaries, and as John shared, to be competitive with recruiting and retention, if the budget supports it, moving to that salary structure now would be my recommendation.
At this time, any questions?
Tell me again, the merit pay increase, how would that work?
It's a matrix. I'll go back to that slide. And it's something we would have to build. But basically what you're doing is you're taking your appraisal rating, which would be tied in with our performance review. And obviously the higher the expected, the higher the performance, you get a higher percentage. But we would also look at, you'd be eligible for a larger increase the further you are away from the mid-range based on your position.
Why is that?
Well, basically, it's our goal is to bring people to the mid-range. We have these salary structures, minimum typically where we hire people in that. And then as they get along the system, it's harder to get up to the minimum range because the larger your salary, when you get an increase, like a percentage increase, that dollar amount is going to be larger as well. So the logic behind this is to bring people along who are performing well, and obviously people are not performing well, they would be rewarded accordingly.
Okay, so it does, both the merit part of it and the general move to the midpoint is all based on the employee performance.
Yes.
Okay, good. In terms of the employee, we have 25, is that correct? Staff member, how many total do we have?
The entire staff,
Yes.
we have 150 employees.
150 plus. And in terms of putting them into groups of similar jobs, how many groups would you have?
If you look at the salary structure in percent, we have what are called grades. And basically, these are benchmark positions based on the skill set. And what NFP did was they basically looked at, like I said, organizations that are similar to us and looked at their job descriptions and positions that were similar. They would group those in together.
Okay, so you do have groups. So why don't you just take let's just use a number, 5% is the board agrees to have a salary raise.
Mhm.
And then you go to these groups and you rank the employees from 1 to 10, whatever the number is. And then the ones at the top might get 7 or 8%. The ones at the bottom might get a 0.
Well, the matrix kind of does that because if you look at up on there, you'll see that higher performers are getting a larger percentage of the.
Yeah, I can't see that. chart.
Okay, sorry, that's,
I mean,
yeah.
We were
I'm happy
hoping-
to share it with you.
We were hoping to have gotten this hard copy before this
Right.
presentation.
Okay,
Yeah.
So will we get this today? Will it be emailed to us today?
I can send it to you. Yes.
So as you did your presentation, did you talk about a plan for getting people in range? I know we have, 4 people who are outside of the range.
I believe there's 6 people outside of the range.
Did you give us a proposal on that?
Yes, it was to bring them up to the minimum effective January 1st, 2023.
So just lumps, just bring them up to the
Yes.
minimum?
And then we would address bringing them further along the line with one of the examples is using the merit matrix.
So the CFO who's 13,000 below would get a bump 13,000 in 23.
That is correct.
Okay, and are these all being checked against, are these employees merit the increase?
Yes, they've all received performance evaluations.
Okay, were they all
Yes.
Yes.
good?
Yes.
Okay, that was the question I said.
Okay. So basically, you just want a copy of the merit. I can send you the PowerPoint if I would help.
Yes,
Okay.
that would definitely help because it's not exact, I don't
Sure.
understand.
Sure,
Well,
and it is a complex and it's something we would take all of 2023 to build.
Sure.
And it
And
wouldn't be for 20, but we just want you to be aware of that. We want to bring our employees up to at least the very bare minimum effective January 1st. And then we have a commitment. to
Sure.
move people
So as we talk about January 1st, I think definitely build a commitment to getting people who are outside of the range into the range. But one of the things that it said in the document from NFP was committing to a phase 2 to 3 year approach to narrow the gap.
Yeah,
So I
that's where the merit matrix, which obviously you haven't seen it, so I do apologize, but that would explain some of that.
That's to narrow the gap to mid-range, not to get people to minimum.
It says, identify which employees are furthest away from the anticipated place in range, and for someone commensurate with experience and level of contributions. So that's to get them in range, but so what is NFP's recommendation for people who are outside of the range? Just bumping
Bring them up,
salaries?
that's the year 1 plan, and then we're going to use that whole year to pick apart and build this matrix.
Mhm.
That's what we're
So the
proposing.
only immediate change that's being recommended is to get the 6 people to the minimum for
Right.
January 1,
Yes.
right?
And to approve the recommended salary structure as our 2023 salary schedule and bring all 6 of those people to that bare minimum. And then through this process, we would be evaluating people and working to get them into the right place in the range based on their performance and their experience and skills, et cetera.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
No other questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we will have public comment. As I mentioned, we will have the 30-minute limitation at this meeting with 2 minutes per comment. So,
I'm going to turn the lights back on.
okay. Okay. So, does the representative from NFP want to continue? Or-
Megan, you don't have to stay on if you would like to not be on there anymore. That's fine. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for inviting me.
Okay. So at this time, I'll ask Amber Carmichael to.
My husband and I started regularly attending library board meetings back in December of 2021. Over the past year, there have been several occasions where misinformation on social media caused people to show up in droves to speak out against book banning, only to discover that no one was asking that a single book be banned. Many of you may discover that our views are more closely aligned than you may have been led to believe. Tonight, there will be a discussion about a new collection development policy, which is something that this library desperately needs. I'd like to applaud the current board for taking up this issue. For those who are new to the discussion, I'd like to share about 2 books that demonstrate why an improved policy is of the utmost importance. The first book is called Let's Talk About It. This book was shelved in the collection for children as young as 11 years old. Here is a direct quote. A great place to research fantasies and kinks safely is on the internet. There are tons of people and communities out there who share your interests and have all kinds of advice. While the book reassures children that talking to strangers about their sexual kinks online is a safe activity, the FBI strongly disagrees. In fact, it is just this sort of behavior that puts children in contact with sexual predators. The library's own lawyer declared this book to be objectively harmful to children. Books that put our children in harm's way do not belong in a collection curated specifically for them. The second book is called A Quick and Easy Guide to Consent. This book includes a checklist of sexual activities for kids to consider trying that goes on for 5 pages. One suggestion is to send nude photos. This is actually a felony for children in the state of Indiana. Other suggested activities include group sex, bondage, floggers, whips, and blindfolds. These 2 books have not been banned. They were simply moved to the adult collection. Keep in mind that the library card are allowed to check out books from the adult collection, so they will still have access. Moving these books out of the collection for kids will, however, help children avoid stumbling on them accidentally. I appreciate the board working to improve our library's collection development policy. It is clearly needed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is Chad Carmichael.
One claim I hear from those who oppose attempts to fix the collection development policy is that books with LGBT characters are important for various reasons. This is not in dispute. I'm not aware of anyone who has proposed moving a book out of the teen zone on the grounds that it contains an LGBT character. What we have objected to is promoting books to kids that encourage drug use, pornography, committing felonies, group masturbation, pervasive vulgarity, and the like. If this group of activists is going to successfully disagree with the broader community about this, they need to know what it is that we are objecting to. And we are not objecting to having books with gay characters in the teen zone. Another claim I hear is that our attempt to revise the collection development policy to move books that are harmful to children to the adult section is actually an attack on LGBT people, who, according to these folks, apparently want these vile books pushed on children. My reply is that the claim is not true, and it slanders the LGBT population. It is hateful to say that LGBT people as a group want the library to promote books to children that encourage them to commit felonies by sending nude pictures of themselves to strangers. It is hateful to say that LGBT people as a group want to promote books to children that tell them to talk to strangers about online about sexual kink. These claims are hateful generalizations about a whole group of people, and it is wrong to repeatedly make them. So these talking points are off the mark. What we've asked for is that materials acquired by HEPL be shelved age appropriately. The board has put the words age appropriate into the proposed collection development policy, but this is not enough. The director does not agree with the board about what books are age appropriate. She has refused to say, for example, that the Moen book, deemed objectively harmful to children by the library's lawyer, is age inappropriate. So the board, if it is to solve this problem, is going to need to get a director who understands what the phrase age appropriate means, or the board is going to have to micromanage the director and define exactly what it means. Thank you.
Okay, next is Kathy Harris.
Hello, I've been a Fishers resident for 15 years and I've been attending the board meetings for 18 months now. One of the things I want to address is the subject on moving books. Many in our community see this as banning books or censoring. And what is the accurate legal definition? It seems that we have been unable to accurately define it, even from the library's legal counsel. At the last meeting, there's a question by one board member if a lawsuit could occur as a result of moving the Making a Baby book to the general collection out of the kids area, based on First Amendment rights violation. Ms. Poindexter stated that there could be a risk. What is the legal difference if a decision to move a book is made by the board or by the director? Last year, Ms. Waterman made the decision to move the book Drawn to Sex by Erica Moen from the teen area to the general collection due to the material not being appropriate for teens under the age of 18. This was the correct decision, and we thank you for doing so. She also made the decision to move the entire teen nonfiction collection out of the teen zone to the general collection. Was this considered banning or censoring books? Was this a violation of First Amendment rights and possible risk of a lawsuit? What is the difference? It seems that we need some real clarity in regards to the legality of this issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Is it possible for folks to stand over here?
Sure. If you could stand in the middle so we can all see you. Next up is Kim Logan.
Yes. So I've been coming to the board meetings for over 18 months, and I consistently hear some what I call opinions. And I live in a world of facts, and I think that that's really important for as you're looking at this, because there's been a lot of emotion here. One of the ones I hear is that there are people on the board that want to ban or censor books, and I see no evidence of this. I see no facts to back up this statement that I've heard Ms. Dittmerson, Mr. Malone, and Ms. Allring and Reverend Beckwith say specifically, we are not interested in banning books. So I wish we kind of put that to rest. The audience in the library board meeting also represents the community. I heard that last month, or the last time we met. I would have to disagree. You know, we got 40, 50 people here for 200,000 plus people. And I don't think that that is very representative. Some people can't get here, as was noted last time, because of the time, et cetera. 40, 50 people out of that 200,000 is a pretty small sample size. And if you were paying attention at all to what happened in Fishers last month of the election, you might see that some of the opinions that have been posted here have been squashed in Fishers. The book Making a Baby was checked out 50 times in a year and no one had a problem with it. Another comment I heard. Do we really know that? Did we ask those 50 people, are you okay with this book? Maybe they didn't even understand, hey, I'm not cool with this book, but I'm just going to put it back. I didn't know there was an option to do the reconsideration because that form is no longer on the website. So I think we are dealing again with opinions instead of facts. Certain board members have accused of being anti-LGBTQ. I think that's also sad to say because we've got two of them that are promoting changing the Rainbow Reads Club to 2 different times to help with that, with more attendance. I think that we are dealing a lot of opinions, and I really hope that we can get to facts. I really think it's important that that we are sticking with those and we are looking at truths and not just opinions, because that does not really help anybody. So I submit that when that I will always speak in facts, which I try to do every time, and I hope others will too.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Allison Hanley.
Hi, my name is Allison Hanley, and I'm a resident of Noblesville. This is my first time coming to a meeting, a library board meeting, because I've become increasingly aware of controversy over the selection and placement of sexually explicit books in our libraries. Because this concerns me. In looking at your collection development policy and selection criteria, I find that priority is placed on the interests and needs of the public, contributions to diversity, presentation of controversial points of view, and reviews in the media, but not a lot of clear definition is made in choosing books and reading materials that are suitable for different stages of development. It appears the library is very focused on being diverse and inclusive, but where is the concern for protecting children? I consulted 2 mental health experts to learn more about how sexually explicit materials can have a negative impact on children. I provided the following data based on a research on this topic, and these references I can provide if requested. Number 1, the American Psychological Association defines sexualization as imposing sexuality upon a person, especially upon children. Number 2, research indicates there is a link between sexualized media and increased risky sexual behavior among youth, and this includes teen pregnancy, sexual violence, and sexually transmitted infections. Number 3, health experts and mental health clinicians unequivocally agree that exposing children to viewing sexual activities is a form of child sexual abuse. Number 4, such child sexual abuse can lead to a plethora of psychological and emotional issues in later development in adulthood, including sexual orientation and identity issues. Number 5, over-sexualization of children is a predictor for perpetrating sexual violence in adulthood. It is also linked with low self-esteem, depression, negative body image, and a negative impact on healthy emotional and social development. I believe ignoring these data is wrong. Additional language is needed in this policy to put guardrails up to ensure that we shield children from information not appropriate for their stage of development.
Thank you. Leah Leach.
Come to center. Hi again, I am Dr. Lee Leach. I'm the founder and executive director of the Gals Guide Library. I was the one that was here last time instead of sitting at a fancy award ceremony. Turns out that Gals Guide actually won Organization of the Year. The mayor of Noblesville was very proud, and they were saying that I couldn't be there because I was standing up for our community, and the crowd knew exactly where I was, and the support was electric. This whole thing has been going on for a long time, and it's slowly becoming ridiculous. There are members of the board that are fighting a losing battle. The library has an age-appropriate policy. It was read to us at the last meeting. The library has a parent's guide. It is on multiple pages of the website. The legal protection and the so-called guide rails are already in place. I want to thank the board for taking the time to research second opinion lawyers to do the due diligence with taxpayers' money. I too looked up the attorneys. Neither of them list constitutional law as one of their top service practices. There appears to be more experience with mold cases than constitutional law. These attorneys, you were told, have a specialty, but they can't get around the First or 14th Amendment. They can't get around the Bill of Rights. Moving books based on motivations voted upon at the last meeting is censorship. The ACLU is aware, the public access counselor is aware, and people in the press are also aware too. I urge you to save face and to drop this idea of getting a second opinion lawyer. If you use taxpayer dollars to continue to try to move around the First and 14th Amendment, it is not something that is liked by any political party or voting board. And one last thing. One of my favorite books as a kid was Oh, the Places You'll Go. You may not have read it, but this was the last book that Dr. Seuss wrote before he died. It's a pretty famous book, even if you haven't read it. It was even in a few movies. The Terminal was one of them that was my favorite. This book is given away at graduations of high school, college senior, high school seniors and college seniors as well. I got it at my high school graduation as a present. There's a whole line of products that go with it too, that are subject for adults. There are journals, there are t-shirts, there are mugs, there are posters. But you know what? As much as this book is gifted to graduates, it's still in the children's section of libraries and bookstores. The reason why is
Excuse me.
Ms. Lee,
You-
Dr. Lee.
it's written for preschoolers. So it's ridiculous to move this book to the travel section as it was
Okay,
ridiculous to
thank
move
you.
anything else.
Appreciate your
Thank you.
comments. Thank you. And next is Alan Hawkins.
I've seen my time. Allison.
I see. Okay, thank you. Next would be Lori Hand.
Hi, I'm Lori Hand. This is my first time speaking to the library board. I've lived in Noblesville for 24 years and I've worked in book publishing for nearly 32 years. If you give a mouse a cookie, he's going to ask for a glass of milk. In February, the board gave a cookie to the handful of activists who have been challenging various library books by moving all of the teen nonfiction titles to either the adult or children's section. Now the board is considering giving them that glass of milk in the form of a segregated gender section and a proposed rating and or labeling system. One rating system suggested by a subgroup of the board members is that of book looks. Every year, more than 200,000 books are published in the US. However, the book looks database contains only 398 reviewed books. Founded by a Moms for Liberty member, the site is used to fuel book challenges in school libraries. So I find this an inappropriate tool for use by the library. Even Book Look says that the books they challenge should still be available in public libraries. The board knows that these are legally precarious moves, but instead of heeding the library's own counsel, it seeks to spend taxpayer money on an expensive second opinion, perhaps a way to skirt the First Amendment. Do you think this board will stop at a glass of milk? Or will a segregated gender section make it easier to later restrict access to books that mention LGBTQ topics or to remove these books altogether? Parents have the right and the responsibility to guide what their children read, but they do not have the right to determine what everyone else will read, now, most especially in a public library. I'm asking you to be better shepherds of our money and to stop othering our LGBTQ young people. Thank you.
Okay, Brad. Can't pronounce the last name. Sorry.
Sawinski.
Thank you.
My name is Brad Swinsky. I'm the Youth Services Manager at the Alexandria Monroe Public Library, which is like a little bit north of here.
You were here last month.
Yes, yes. I did want to praise the addition of the language in the collection development policy that you guys were talking about tonight of the role of parents. Parents should be aware that children have access to all materials in the library. As worker in the library, people don't always read signs, so I'm loving that you're putting more of a case that parents need to be involved. They shouldn't be shocked that things that exist are in books. So that's kind of wait, my time up? The second thing too is the outside is awesome. I can't wait to see. Are you guys gonna have sledding and stuff on the hill?
I hope not.
Okay. Oh, okay. You guys should totally have sledding. I would come up with that.
You want to be in charge of it?
No, liability waivers all around. The other thing that I did want to talk about the request last month about moving the book. It seemed to disregard most experts and employees, and even like the Dewey Decimal System. There was requests of, well, just you put it where we want you to put it, and I would just want the board to be more appreciative of what actually exists in the library sciences. The other one is the collection development policy suggestion for tonight. I would totally be against any kind of a scenario where there's a board member getting to decide another citizen of this area to basically take away a book. So in that, I think it was, I can't remember who came up with that one, but it said that it would be a board member, a member of the community, and then one of the library workers. And then they would vote on whether or not to take away the book. That one's mine now, isn't it? Okay. Well, but thank you though. So,
Okay, thank you. And last is Kara Avery.
I am Carol Wong. I'm a 17 or 18 year resident of Fishers. I'm also a physician, has my practice in Fishers. And I just wanted to say a few things. I asked that the board consider having all meetings recorded and shared online so that people who are unable to attend can view. And also that all documents and slides presented at meetings be added to meeting minutes. I noticed that there were some documents provided online tonight. So I would like that to kind of continue for people who are unable to attend. I just want to say, you know, censorship is almost never about a book. It's about some people imposing their personal, political, or religious ideologies on all people, and censoring books by moving them allows a few people to make decisions for everyone. As we saw with Making a Baby, which was moved after a single challenge, despite there were many other people checked it out and not complaining about it. Now it's going to be less likely for the people who want to find a book to read to their child because it's no longer in the children's section. And I know someone brought up something about Amazon saying something about parents. Amazon puts it as a children's book. They recommend it for ages 5 to 8. They recommend it for grades kindergarten to 3rd grade. It's on several of their lists for children's books. It's not an adult book. What this kind of censorship about moving books around and making like huge deals about books, because no one's going to agree on the books. That's why it's a public library. No one is going to agree. What I consider appropriate is not what you might consider appropriate. That's been stated over and over. What this type of censorship leads to is that certain books and materials might not even be purchased because it fears that they might be challenged.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
One more name. One more name. I didn't hear my name, sorry.
Let me look. I hope I didn't miss somebody. You can certainly speak. I don't think I missed.
Andy Dennison should be on the list.
You're welcome to
Okay,
speak.
thank you. As I said, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Andy Dennison. I'm a resident of Noblesville, faithful patron of the Noblesville, the Himmelese Public Library for about 20 years now, and I love this place. I really do. I visit the library once or twice a week. I typically just stick to the adult section, but on occasion I'll go to the teen zone to pick out something for my son, or if I get a touch of nostalgia, I might wander down here to the kids section to pick up a book from my childhood that I loved at that time and reread. I'm speaking today just to support the board's decision to review and revise the library's collection policy to ensure that inappropriate materials are removed and excluded from the kids section. I'm aware that some have attempted to politicize this decision, seeking to reframe it as an effort by the board to quote, ban books, abridge free speech, or censor certain points of view. Nothing could be further from the truth. All such efforts are mere distractions, distortions of the facts, and attempts to deflect attention from the real issue at hand, which is the creation of policies that seek to protect our precious and innocent children from exposure to materials of a sexual nature. In preparing for this meeting, I examined one of the books in question, a book that is currently available to children as young as 5 years old. The book, It's Perfectly Normal, features images of men and women in a variety of sexual positions, with explicit descriptions of those sex acts. And it struck me in an instant that to expose a child to sexually explicit materials of this nature in any other context would be rightly considered sexual abuse of a child and appropriately condemned. Why would it be considered appropriate for the library to do so?
In conclusion, I strongly encourage the board to continue its course to ignore the personal attacks that I personally heard last month and the deliberate mischaracterizations, to not give in to the pressure and intimidation of those who would put political agendas ahead of the safety and well-being of the children of our community. Thank you very much.
That's everyone that's signed up. Okay, next on the agenda, we will hear from two attorneys from TAP Law, and they will speak to the board, and the board can ask questions with regarding their scope of work and their proposal.
Good afternoon. My name is Blake Bergen. I'm with TAP. I'm a partner at TAP. I've been there in Hudson Law, I guess, for 25, 26 years. And I've been a Hamilton County resident for just about as long, 25 years. I think. So anyway, I had emailed, I think you all should have received a copy, hopefully, of our engagement letter. I think it's pretty straightforward, but certainly we're here to the extent you have questions. I'm happy to try to answer them. I've got my partner, Jeff Stemrick, here with me. I'll let him introduce himself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jeff Stemrick. I've been with TAP for about 11 years. I did a quick shift in Indiana Supreme Court for Chief Justice before that. Also happy to answer any questions.
Jeff, could you in particular address your experience in constitutional law?
Yeah, certainly. So I clerked in the Indiana Supreme Court, so I dealt with a number of constitutional cases there. He addressed the current constitutional issues on license and practice before the Supreme Court of the United States. So yeah, I'm very well equipped to deal with and address constitutional issues. My primary area of practice is appellate law, which is, the level of court above through the trial court, which is where all the, bulk of the constitutional decisions you read about in paper are read. So that's sort of my primary area of expertise.
I've also handled, I'm a litigator primarily, but I've handled in my practice over the years several constitutional issues that come up in the representation of municipalities. Not the particular ones we're discussing here, but certainly Jeff is the scholar. He's one of our resident constitutional scholars, I would say. I don't profess to be. But to the extent the research and analysis of that work, that would be primarily.
So do you have any idea of extensive time that would be put into a project like this?
Well, it's how many hours? I've done an estimate of hours. I know just preliminarily, and Craig can attest to this. This area of the law, and you too, for that matter. This area of the law is not black and white. It's not clear. If it were, we wouldn't be standing here. So we've already done, I would say, 10 to 15 hours, I would bet, just getting. Because there's a lot of cases from all over the country, including Supreme Court cases, appellate court decisions, district court decisions. So that's just to get to where we are. I mean, I think the lion's share of the work we probably have done, but to the extent but we've not really answered any specific questions of the board. We haven't done any of that yet, so we certainly would be willing and able to do that, but I don't think it would be a lot.
The estimate in the letter is a total fee not to exceed $20,000.
That's right.
And the hourly rate of $475.
That's right.
And I believe at the last meeting, we were told they might not even charge us, I think is what I heard. But anyway, what does the end product look like for $20,000?
That would be up to the board. I mean, the board is the client, so it's whatever the board would request, but it would be our opinions on the issues that you as a board are considering and addressing, and it would be normally a written memorandum, something that documents, our position on this and our advice.
So you could provide language that we could put into the election policy to address some of the things that you've heard today in terms of both sides of the argument.
Absolutely.
And that would, and you would provide us with some level of risk benefit that might occur here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that would all be part of it.
Yeah, we can do that. We could also explain all the First Amendment principles, in court case that underlie sort of that advice. So from a policy perspective of what the law is in this area to, what you guys could and implement.
Yeah, right now, we're hung up on acquisition and placement of books. So that's what we're interested in, getting some guide rails in terms of how they are, what we might acquire. And if we do acquire them, where do we place them appropriately?
Yeah, that would all be part of it. And absolutely, take over the,
Yeah, I think I saw your hourly rate there, 475. Blake, what is yours?
Yeah, mine is higher, but I'm not even, I will tell you that, to the extent you're asking about not being charged, I'm not gonna put my time down, because I'm not, I told you, I'm not. Jeff is the one that has analyzed and will be providing the advice here. I'm certainly attending meetings, I will be involved, but I'm not gonna do anything. That's why I intentionally did not put my rate in.
So will we only see billings from Jeff then? I saw in your letter, we got billables all the way up to 75.
That's the standard engagement letter, to be honest, so they always put the range at our firm from the lowest to the highest, and that's just the standard letter.
My firm's letter looked like that too, but yeah, I just want to make sure
Oh,
we
yeah.
know who's billing our project.
Oh, no, Jeff would be his time would be the only one that would be billed.
Okay, you had paralegal rates in there. Will you see any paralegal work on this?
No, there would be no reason for paralegal to be involved. And again, that's just the standard letter, that money is not in there, but no paralegal work.
So not to exceed 20,000, that's something you anticipate approaching or getting to?
I don't know, I just don't want to be, well, I mean, I won't say we wouldn't approach it, but what I don't want to do is give you a number lower than that and come in higher, because that never goes well. So I would prefer to get the level that I think is a reasonable estimate of what it would take, and hopefully be below that. But certainly, and maybe you guys feel otherwise, but with other municipal clients that I've worked with, they tend to want to not to exceed, so they know there's a cap. It's not just going to be unlimited.
In the 10 to 15 hours of already put it, might go towards the 20,000 limit.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
And that's just an off the cuff estimate. I haven't looked at my times and how many's in it.
And if there were some reason, some unusual circumstance where we would think, I can't imagine how this would happen, but if we would think we would deal with that, we wouldn't do that without, alerting the board ahead of time and getting approval before we would do it.
Jeff, you mentioned work at the Indiana Supreme Court. Your current practice, what percentage of your practice is constitutional issues or First Amendment issues?
I don't know off the top of my head, it's hard to quantify. I mean, I get involved from time to time when they come up. But it's not you don't get a whole lot of constitutional issues across your desk, commercial or the Annapolis, but they do handle from time to time they come up, and they do press the current case law. So I'm always following the court.
So I appreciate, so you said this is your standard engagement letter for TAP?
I mean, it's got some standard language. I wouldn't say it's the exact same. Certainly not the private ones.
Fair, and like the non-discrimination paragraph?
That's right.
How recently was that modified? Because it was interesting to see that race, religion, color, sex, disability, national origin, ancestry were listed, but sexual orientation was not. I know that's federally protected.
No, I know. I understand. I don't know.
Okay, because that gave me some pause.
I understand.
Given what brought us here and where we're at, that
No,
seemed like a key.
And a fair point. I don't know when it was revised, and that's something that certainly will mention when we get back.
And then can you just tell me how you got here? I'm not talking Cumberland Road 37, but
So you don't want to hear that, 'cause it was not fun. It's more of a slog. I thought I was coming in, but I ended up Fall Creek. So I had spoken to Laura, Laura gave me a call. And I know not the guy to do this necessarily, but I got the people. Yeah, exactly. That's right.
And their firm was referred through county commissioners who work with them in the past.
right, and I know you have other municipal clients in the county.
That's right.
Where
That's true.
And then Jeff, in your litigation appellate level, civil, criminal.
The almost exclusively civil. I can't think of last time. I occasionally get involved in criminal matters on the side for complex issues that come up that are not ordinary, but that's not the full thing.
Any level of specialization within the civil field? Of who gets it, or is it just whatever walks in the door?
Yeah, I mean, it's primarily whoever's got the complex appellate issues we end up on my desk. So whether that's complex cause action fields, all kinds of issues about it.
Can you tell me about the last one you had, COA or Supreme Court?
Yeah, I mean, we just got one. This is the last one, it's the most bigger one. We had a class action case involving some old dormitories. Field that classification first and outright went on some of the issues. So.
Fair.
Any questions? I was gonna ask Micah, who's attending from Israel, if you have any questions.
Yeah, so I don't think I have any questions per se, but yeah, I know that $20,000 is a lot of money to spend. As I'm just sitting here thinking, making sure we get this right. So as we do this, we want to make sure that first and foremost that we're protecting constitutional liberties for people, but we also want to make sure that we're protecting the innocence of our children. And so I guess I'm having a little bit unstable connection with the internet, so I was trying to listen in. But I guess my question to the gentleman would be just seeing some other constitutional cases that you've worked on. I'd like to see those. If maybe those were already sent over, but if there's a few examples of First Amendment type cases that you've had any access to or any experience with, I'd love to kind of see some of those cases if that's possible.
Yeah, I don't know if you can hear me, but yes, we can provide that to you.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you.
Is it on the app? Is that something that you can reference here, just to give us a little bit of history on any kind of case, First Amendment case?
I'm trying to think litigation. I've had several clients with First Amendment issues that we've advised. I personally have advised on where I say I'm not constitutional, but I've had clients all the time that come up with freedom of speech, those types of issues. They don't always, in fact, oftentimes do not end up in litigation.
Yeah, usually the goal is to get out of litigation.
Yeah, so it's more an advisory capacity. I know, and I'm not trying to avoid the question here. I know our firm has handled several. As I sit here, I can't think of the last one I've done that's specific to the First Amendment.
That's kind of an odd bird of a First Amendment case. There's not a lot of them out there. There's not, they're not filed routinely, especially not in across the country. Not that many.
So what are the nature of the cases about?
For
First Amendment?
Yeah, there's a whole slew of cases on this particular issue. For example, obviously the Supreme Court's been has the happening out, what kind of language can be used in trademark registrations and whether by avoiding allegedly hateful names of fans by the USPTO violates the First Amendment. In this case, from the gamut of speech issue, you probably think of probably a Supreme Court case on it. So,
Do you have any experience working with libraries?
Working with libraries? Yeah,
not representing libraries, no, not.
That's not a particularly unique. So there's not a whole lot about representing libraries.
Customer engagement, trying to decide who would be your client here. Would it be the library as an institution or the board of directors? I know I typically take the position when I do municipal representation. I represent the entire municipalities. That way I'm responding to key officers and such. And I think Ann takes the same position with her representation of this library. Who would be your client?
Yeah, I think it would be the library would be the client, and if it's the board, that's my area, but I think the library would be the next.
So you'd be reporting findings to the full board as well as the director?
I mean, that whatever the board requests us to do, you know.
Okay, because it sounds like some work's already been done and I wasn't aware of that. I thought we were voting on this.
Not work, no,
Or-
just, I mean, when you say work, nothing in terms of getting arms around the state of the law.
Right,
You
but
can have
the
a
10 to
conversation.
15 billable hours, and this is more of a question for my colleagues than for you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were asking
No,
me.
I'm sorry. Yes, so, yeah,
Okay.
I'm just a little confused about where we are. with this.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's worth making sure that we go down this route one way or the other. I mean, we've got to get this situation figured out because we have community members that are at odds with one another. Some say it's a violation, others say it's not. And so, again, making sure that we're stewarding the money well is important, but we also need to make sure that we are creating a safe environment for our children. And I think that's, in my opinion, it's worth spending the money. Now, whether or not it's Taft Law Firm or not, we can obviously discuss that, but we need to make sure we get this right.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you both for
Thank you
coming.
for your time.
Appreciate your time. This isn't a time to question the guests, I'm sorry. Okay. So I would accept a motion to accept the proposal from Taft Law.
Make a motion to accept the proposal from Taft Law.
Seconded.
Is there discussion?
I guess I want to revisit the comment I made a moment ago where so we've already done 10 to 15 billable hours with this group, which if I did the math correctly is around $7,000 at the high end. And it was my understanding at the last meeting that we were going to discuss this. We have this statement of work. So I am a bit confused about how we've already spent $7,000 without having this discussion, without having this presentation, without having this letter. It's concerning to me. So that's.
I haven't seen an invoice for those hours, so I'm not aware of the time that's been spent.
They just said they had spent
I'm
10 to 15
afraid.
billable hours.
Okay, so we have not been billed, have we? And I think some of that, I'm guessing, because I don't know, would be to have a better understanding of the nature of libraries and the nature of issues that have become apparent, not only locally, but nationally. So I think that's just in their, I would guess, their attempt to get up to speed on current situations.
I think this is the risk, though, when we have a portion of the board that adopts a project and proceeds without it, and then the full board is brought in, a considerable way through the project. And that, like I said, that's concerning to me.
So we've been working with the collection development policy for 5 months.
Oh,
It's at least, okay, so it predates me coming onto the board. And so I guess we've just kind of gotten to the point where, I mean, like, even when we did discuss it at the last meeting, we didn't get anywhere. It was pretty contentious. I mean, there's language there that we disagree on. So it is time to, like Micah said, to do it right. And we do need some outside opinion as to what the guardrails are, what we can and cannot do. And sometimes, I mean, in what I do, sometimes you bring in an expert. I mean, I feel like we do need some guidance so that we can put it to rest.
We have an expert. We have Ann.
Ann is a wonderful attorney and she's given us great advice. I don't think that constitutional law is an area of her expertise. I could be wrong.
It is not, as the gentleman who talked to you tonight before, it's not the first constitutional issue that I've ever addressed. I've addressed a variety of them in my practice, but no, I've never told you I'm a constitutional expert.
Yeah, and just like the meeting that we had when, with the construction project, we brought in an expert there on construction law to have that conversation because we needed some guidance that was outside of our normal counsel. So I don't think that bringing in an expert in constitutional law is egregious, and it's not something that we've never done before. I think that's what we do to better serve our community, is when we get to a stopgap, we got to bring in an expert. It's not, I mean, we're working on behalf of the taxpayers, the library, to have a collection development policy that has guardrails, and there are some rules out there that we just need some further clarification on. They're outside my expertise.
And I have no doubt that Blake and Jeff are fine attorneys. It's just, what I heard was these issues come up and we address them. It's not like they're going to the office every day working on these. It's not like our last expert consulting construction law. That's what he did day in, day out. As Ann just mentioned, and she deals with constitutional issues when they come up.
So do you have a better source of constitutional lawyer all the time that we should work with?
So I think I'm happy with Ann's opinion, but if we're open to interviewing other candidates, I think we could actually probably find some attorneys who do this more day in and day out. Of course, library First Amendment issues, you're not gonna find.
I was recommended.
Go ahead,
Sorry, Micah.
I was recommended a lawyer by the name of William Bach from KGR Law. And he's a constitutional lawyer that's worked with ADF and has done a lot of good constitutional work and we could always bring him in and, you know, see if we can, I can certainly pass on this contact if that's helpful. And, you know, I wasn't necessarily real impressed with the lawyers that were just up there. I mean, I'm sure to that point they were fine lawyers, but I really would love to see somebody that really knows the Constitution. It doesn't sound necessarily like it was like that's their wheelhouse a ton. I think that they would do fine, but if we're going to do this right, again, I would say there's maybe one or two others that we could look at and just see if we can get it going. Again, those lawyers, I'm sure they were they're very fine lawyers, but at the same time, having multiple opinions is always a good thing in my opinion, especially on something this contentious in our community. And we want to make sure we get it right and protect constitutional values, but at the same time, you know, protect our children. So I don't know if that sounds good to anybody else on the board.
We are interested in looking at other people. I know a couple names come to mind. I know there's a Rich Wylock. He's at Lewis Wagner. I know he's done constitutional litigation on some big name issues, and I think one of his bread and butter issues that are kind of advertising type laws frequently runs in the First Amendment issues. I know there's a Pam Sheen that I've had on the other side of cases. I could talk with her. I know she represents I think the police department and law enforcement frequently, and that comes into 1983 suits, constitutional issues. I can see if she has any First Amendment experience, but there are names I consider.
So we all agree that we do need to bring in an expert on this topic. Are we all in agreement on that? Because as we start throwing out names, it seems that we all agree that we need some type of expert guidance.
I guess I would say I'm happy with Ann's work, but if a majority of the board wants an expert opinion, then I think we should get the best one that we can.
But isn't it, I mean, I'm just thinking, I'm not a lawyer. Any person that we get, I mean, like, you know, fine lawyers, they're gonna have to do a considerable amount of research just to get up to speed with what we're asking. And then there's the unique situation here. So, I mean, don't all lawyers just research a topic?
I mean, there's a big difference. I mean, I could research this topic, but I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but there's other people I can walk into their office and they've seen it 100 times.
Yeah. Well, these I've seen it like 50 times.
Yeah, like, yeah, for example, if you walk in my office and have a home contractor dispute, I can cite the law. If you walk in my office with another type of dispute, I could get up to date on it, but I'd have to put in that work.
And I think that's what any attorney would do if they've met with a potential customer and the customer has a situation at hand that needs legal counsel. That person, that attorney, I would imagine, would do a little bit of legwork to kind of get up to speed on what the issues are. First Amendment issues might be within a public institution like a library or a school, for that matter. So as to not go to the first meeting totally unprepared or not knowing what to talk about, I would think they would do a little bit of homework, which would I guess you could call it billable hours, but basically just getting up to speed with what the situation is. So I don't think that's outside the scope of any.
We just discussed
situation.
the second opinion lawyer at the last meeting, and so I'm still surprised at 10 to 15 billable hours even to prepare for this meeting, and the answers they provided at a rate of $7,000 without us having this discussion is still alarming to me. So, but the majority board wants to
Well-
hire with Craig.
Can I maybe speak to that for a second? Did we sign a contract with them? I mean, is that something to add on once they, I mean, there hasn't been anything sent to us like Laura said.
Do we have a bill?
So.
We don't have a bill.
I'm sure that the whole, correct me if I'm wrong, what I understood them to say was in response to the $20,000 limit, the 10 to 15 would go to that. If they have not, if you choose not to engage Taft, they do not have a contract and will not collect from.
Okay.
But I understood them to say that 10 to 15 would be billed towards the $20,000 total or included in that if you accepted the proposal.
Yes, that's correct.
I would like to see better due diligence by this group. So if we're gonna look at other lawyers, I'm with Craig. I'm happy with Ann's opinion and guidance. The majority of the board wants to hire a second opinion lawyer. So I have to go, majority, minority. I will go with what Craig said. I would like to hear from other people where constitutional law is an area of expertise, daily expertise.
Well, I think since we, if that's the case, and I think now we have a consensus that we actually want to get some constitution.
I wouldn't say it's a consensus. It's a majority opinion. That's not the
Well,
same as a consensus.
There's obviously a few of us here who want Taft to come in. There's at least two more that are talking about getting expert opinion. That does make sense. So I think it's sort of a consensus. We want to go down this path. The question is with who?
If you can call it a consensus. I would not call it a consensus, but go ahead.
I'm not saying it's a consensus on Taft. I'm saying it's a consensus that we'd like an expert opinion. And if that's the case, if it's, three of us have come up with our choice for a lawyer. If you guys have alternatives, put them on the table, get them to, and collect the information from them on their backgrounds and bring it to the next meeting. Put up or shut up. This is the dragging on for a long time, and it's time to get something moving forward.
I'm surprised that you didn't suggest something of this nature in our November meeting, that you would like to see other opinions. So,
First time I heard about it in that meeting. But you came to that meeting, you didn't know the hourly rate of insurance.
And I remember what Craig asked for is he wanted to know what we were looking to get out of a second opinion. Am I right?
Correct, yeah.
A statement of work, like from the majority of the board?
Yeah, because I thought we were talking past each other at the last meeting. People said a second opinion. I imagine there's some specific policy that Ann had told you that was unconstitutional. Really, it'd be more fair to characterize as your project.
Yeah, I'm still unclear with this, what we're going to, the end product looks like. Does it look like a collection development policy that the majority of the board will pass? Is that what it looks like? That's what it looks like, right?
Yes.
The end product?
Yes.
Yeah.
It looks like what the board.
Yeah, I think.
we would like to see the policy.
I'm so sorry. This board has changed. And before it changed, no one had a problem with whatever policies the board was putting forth. So I think that we need to understand that this board has shifted because other people have been appointed by different factions, different groups in our community. And just because there's a majority, you keep saying majority like it's a bad thing. We reflect people in this community too.
I understand that the collaborative nature is not here.
The collaborative nature exists every day when we are not together. I've never gotten an email from you. I've never gotten an email from you. I've never gotten an email from you. I've not gotten a phone call from any of you guys to talk about anything. So that's the collaborative nature. This is theater. If you really want to be a team and work together, call somebody. Let's work together. We can talk one-off.
Yeah, there hasn't been any input from the three of you on this policy to speak of, knowing the concerns that the four of us have. To have any back and forth conversation has non-existent. So if you want to work together and get your opinions out, then I think you're welcome to. No one has ever tried to quiet your ideas or opinions.
I remember the last time we sat in this room and worked on the collection development policy, that was a very productive collaborative meeting. And we were very close to getting the collection development policy completed and passed. Now, am I not remembering that correctly? The
No,
meeting we had in here,
there
what was that, 3 months ago?
There was collaboration. And when we talked to members of the public and leaders in the community and expressed to them our still continued concerns with books that we're seeing in the library, they agreed that we needed to continue to discuss ways that we can have guardrails on the acquisition of books and to make sure that we have accurate age-appropriate placement of books. There has never been a discussion to remove a book, ban a book, censor a book at all. So what we're trying to do is with the public, the leaders in this community have come to us and said, we want you to handle this.
So Craig, can you get lawyers to the next meeting? You
So
do
yes, I
a week
will.
to
I
get a
will-
couple
I
of
will look
it.
into a couple of names. I think Mike, I heard some names from Micah. I don't know them personally, but I'd be interested to know who they are and see if we can get them here.
So I think it's great. Reach out to people. Please chat with them before they come and make sure that they understand, where we are, what we're trying to do.
What we're
Because they
trying to
simply
do,
can't show up.
what we're trying to do is get the language in the collection policy to address these issues about placement in particular, that will pass constitutional muster. That's what we're expecting, some paragraph or something from the lawyers that we can put in there that will deal with placement in a way that is satisfying the issues that we have covered in the community and from leaders of the community. So.
And if I could,
Go ahead.
if I could just add to that, kind of what Tiffany said, we represent people in the community too. We were appointed because a lot of people had problems with what they were seeing in the kids section. And I know there's people in the room that don't think there's problems there, but there are people in the room that also do think there are problems there. And so we're not asking to ban books. We're not asking to, do anything that's going to violate anybody's constitutional right.
Okay, so the action then for the next meeting is.
So we're in the middle of discussion before a vote would take place, and since we're not going to vote apparently.
So if I may, what I was going to suggest, based on your discussions, is you take one of two actions. One, either you have a motion to table this topic, or you simply vote on it and to decide whether you're going to go forward to gather the information as to other lawyers, or, forgive me, I said two, but I meant three. The person who made the motion and the second can withdraw it.
Okay. So, again, did you know the options? So what is your?
I'm fine with foundation.
I'm fine with it. I'll stick with that.
So we'll continue with the vote.
Yes.
Okay. So all in favor of,
I
I
have to
agree.
do a roll call.
All right, we will do that by roll call. And the vote will be to accept the motion to hire the TAP firm for a second opinion. And we'll go by roll call.
Howard,
I say aye.
Beckwith,
Aye.
Sitliffson,
Aye.
Madelon,
Aye.
McShaw,
Nay.
Kane, nay, CD.
Nay.
Is there, at this time, is there any further discussion on election policy? So, if not, I would like to read some final remarks.
I do have you. Was there a draft since last one I saw this?
That's the same one.
That's
the last
our
one.
current.
And that's one that was online.
current
I
draft
printed the
we
one
have.
that's the current, yeah, it hasn't been a revision.
There were some syntax grammar things that I think we can get straightened out. I think we checked that. Is that under works, kind of fixing the first person, third person?
Yeah.
That sort of language. Use of Oxford comma, I think would help clarify some things too. As really the newest guy here, I was not party to all the prior discussions. I understand this, a lot of work went into that motion, but for my own purposes, on page 3, the section called accuracy and timeliness of content. I noticed that the word, 6th word used to say accurate, and now it says balance. I'd just like to know some
Yeah.
history behind that change.
Was that with regard to reviewing the books?
That was, I think that was something that Ray was championing, like balance, kind of like the idea that some things are correct, you know.
What page was that on?
some
Bottom
things
page 3.
are great. Accuracy and
Excuse me.
timeliness.
I thought we agreed to keep accurate, if I don't remember, because we went kind of round and round about that. And then Ray, I believe you had agreed to keep accurate, is that right?
You know, that particular one, I don't hear it. Balance makes sense to me from the standpoint of, we can do balance because you can easily see that, but accurate, how do you choose, who decides what accurate is? I think that was the rationale. Accuracy and time to content. Yeah, balance from a variety of sources. This was I never remember. This was related about the fact that what are the reviews? How are the books being selected? What reviews are they using? And there are other reviews out there that might have, for want of a better word, a more conservative point of view on books. And why don't we throw those into the mix? And I think that's where the balance came in to indicate that's what we want. Accurate, I don't think you can say accurate review. I mean, reviews are all written by a person and it's a point of view.
Right. But just as check who it was. I think it was Miss Logan who spoke during the public commentary about facts versus opinions. Accuracy versus balance, like you were saying that the library should have books that deny the Holocaust, that deny the moon landing, and like that sort of thing.
No,
That's
it's
where I
just-
get uncomfortable with when you supplant
Accurate.
accurate with balanced.
Yeah, I don't think, the context here is strictly in the reviews that we were looking at.
Review process.
The review process,
Okay.
not on a balanced book.
Got it.
Because that would be, I wouldn't agree with that.
Okay.
And unless, correct me if I'm wrong, if this doesn't read like it's directed at reviews, then.
No, I see the organizational part of policy at this point is describing the selection criteria. So I asked, should it say accuracy and timeliness of content reviews, or is that more of what?
I think
because the sentence says we are committed to providing balanced current information to our patrons. It's not saying balance. I agree with your point that you want to have balanced reviews, have different opinions.
Balance of
Seven,
opinion.
perhaps.
If I may, I think the balance is added in a different place regarding the review sources. And I do remember what accurate back in that section. So the review sources from a, there was some comment about that, like some statement
a variety of sources or balancing sources or something like that, but I think you did, the intent was to change that back to accurate in that paragraph. Because it's referring to the content, not the reviews.
Is it where we ask for, where it asks for like a list of
That
review sources?
probably, yes, yes.
And I think that we were hoping to have those review sources
Yeah, I see.
available to the public.
Yes.
to see too.
And yeah, I sent our main ones out to you guys.
Okay, so yeah, if it's in another place that's more specific to review, then let's definitely do that.
So I remember that
You can take
discussion.
that out of there. Because, yeah, as you say, the topic is accuracy and timeliness, and it's referring to the types of goals that you want to have. You should. So what do you want to do with that? Take out that red, I forget.
No, I think the red,
You're not,
to your point, right, I think the red is valuable.
Okay.
Of making sure that reviews aren't necessarily coming from a single source, and maybe there's some value to listening to Black voices, we're reviewing folks.
Okay.
I get that. It's the idea that information should be balanced versus accurate is what kicked me in the.
okay.
Okay, so it's balances in the very first.
Yes,
first-
six words in.
Right, got it. Okay,
The other ones.
let's go ahead. Since it's accuracy, we'll change that to accuracy.
Thank you.
Okay. I was the last person that touched this because we had all, if you don't mind, I'll do that again. I'll change that one.
Yeah, there were a couple of things on the first page. I think it's something that we talked about, and I'd like to get an opinion from an expert opinion as we move forward. The first sentence of the second paragraph, access to information is a fundamental right of citizenship. And it talks about the First Amendment. And I think, I don't remember who we were speaking to, but we also talk in our parent section that the parent has the ultimate say for their
Parents are
children.
allowed to impede their children's First Amendment rights. You don't have any First Amendment rights. Like your
Yeah,
parents.
I know. Yeah, my parents told
Tell me
me
about
that.
it.
So I don't know if we need a statement that says, after the United States Constitution, and parents are the ultimate decision makers for children under 18 years of age. I don't know if it makes sense to kind of add that in there, kind of like, there are constitutional rights, but understanding the parent's role there.
Did you want this to be reviewed by the attorneys? Before bringing it up again?
Yeah, I think that adding that up front talks about the rights and then the role of the parents, because that's something that needs to come forward. And then also, as we go through this policy, just adding in some words around, like on page 2, it's the third bulletin. For children and teens, the library will work to ensure the collections are age appropriate. Some of my thoughts are around the topic and placement, noting that some children's books may reside in the general collection outside of the youth zone, just kind of really pulling in some of the things that that can happen. Not saying that that's the policy, but we have books for children and teens, and some of them might be in the general collection. And then also on page 4, when we talk about quality of production, it talks about the physical or technical caliber of illustrations, covers, bindings, recording, printing, or packaging will be a factor in deciding to purchase or decline. And I think we probably need to have a conversation around such illustrations may impact the placement of books that are more mature and age appropriate. So, I just think that there are some different areas for us to consider, just to give some better guardrails around the collection in terms of, what makes sense. Because, we acquired what, 1,800 pieces a month? 1350 a month. And definitely nobody has time to micromanage.
To look at everything.
Exactly. But if we can just really come together around just kind of some cut and dry kind of ideas where, hey, this book is a great children's book, or this is great for middle schoolers, but this may be just a little bit too much. So we want to just make sure that, this collection.
That would need to be
reflects that.
extremely clearly defined.
Yeah, and I
Because that's
think,
an opinion.
sure. So I
So-
think having some extra legal help,
Sure.
so that we can understand what we cannot.
That's my
Maybe
understanding
cannot
of the goal.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think that some extra help will help us put this to bed.
Okay, I think the biggest issue well, the biggest addition was what Laura proposed, which was taken from the Carmel Clay Library for the reconsideration process. And we haven't really discussed that. It'll be useful here to think about that. That's at the very, it's on page 6.
So and I should have asked the lawyers, but with the time, since this has been approved now, what is the timing expectation on getting the opinion and review of the collection development policy? Had anyone asked that or have any information about?
Do we need to get this to the point where we can hand it over to them and have like annotations for where our questions are and where we just kind of stuff?
I had asked them if this is approved, if they could have their conclusion ready for the next meeting.
Next week.
If I may, if it's approved, we have to implement it. So you may want, my suggestion would be to get the opinion first before it becomes policy.
Okay.
It sounds like next week.
Okay.
They'll have the opinion.
We need to
So-
finish this, don't we? So did you want to finish it, then have them look at it and then have it approved, or finish it approved and then have it?
I think it'd be beneficial for them to see what.
Here's our best
Yeah.
draft. Here's our best draft.
Right.
And then-
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Have you had a chance to look at the request for reconsideration that Carmel is utilizing to have any comments or different?
There's a section at the end.
Yeah, it's very last. Can you explain to us more detail on how that works?
I'm not sure I can give you more detail on how it works, other than, it goes through a committee first, a librarian, somebody from the board and somebody from the public. And when we talked about this earlier, my suggestion to you was just to make sure that you consider rotating members of the board and having a list of public who are willing to serve and then rotating through that list so that you don't run into arguments about bias because of
Right.
recurring opinions.
How do you rotate? What typically, is it by book, by month, by year? How does that?
Random draw and rotate through the list.
So you can do it any way you wish to. How many requests for reconsideration do you typically get in a month in the last year? I'll frame it that way.
I would say the last year is an anomaly. So we get them regularly now.
Now, you may, with the new policy, you may wish to start it out, your choice, but you may wish to start it out where it's per book or per request.
And my question would be, do you want to have a staff process first and then a recommendation that would go to that committee? Where the staff would pull all of the reviews and do the work that we as professionals do to evaluate that book and provide that information,
But
rather than having a board member and a member of the public before all of that happens.
I think that's part of it.
I was going to say, if I may, that is part of
Right.
the
I
policy
thought that-
language that's in there. Is that it
That happens
first would
first.
be reviewed at the staff level and then it goes to the committee.
Right.
And then once it goes to committee, is the decision final, or does it come to the board? For another, full board for another review?
The committee would make a recommend, based on this language, the committee makes a recommendation to the
To the
board.
board. Yeah, it's kind of a 3-step process, which I think is good. Kind of gets a lot of input from various people, and then the board finally makes the decision. So I think it seems like a very fair approach.
Yeah, as long as I think it's important that the stage of the citizen, the librarian, and the board members not binding. Exactly. I feel a little nervous as a single board member making decisions for the library.
Sure.
It's a recommendation.
It's just a recommendation.
Now, the green that we have here at the bottom.
Yes.
How long's Chroma Play had that policy?
Hands on that board.
I don't know how long they've had that policy, but
Just
for
curious if they-
some period of time.
the idea if it's been utilized to know, if, wow, I wish we had written this policy differently.
I don't know the last time it was utilized.
So you sit on that board, Ann, or do you represent that board?
I currently sit on that.
Pretty long.
So would we want to just include that principle into the document? Okay.
Okay, so I'll include that. Tiffany, I couldn't follow all the comments you got. Maybe what I should do is, this is a clean, you'll see a clean copy, and then let Tiffany, she can put in comments where she wants to add, and you can see what her things are. And I'll turn that around. So I'll get this.
I have some little solicits, should be solicitations, like that sort of stuff. Great, if everybody's fine, I'll just send you those notes.
Yeah, if you've marked up a copy, just scan it and send it to me, and I'll do those two in this pass. Try and catch some of the grammar in English.
Sounds good. I guess is there, I don't want to use the word consensus because that triggered me as well. It's not just you, Chad. But do we have an idea? The first person, third person thing just drives me nuts, where there's like,
We did that
it's
special-
we,
we did
the
that special for
library,
you.
well, it does, it seems intentional at some points, and it freaks me out.
Just for you.
But don't mix.
I'll tell you
Lots of
what.
you in literature, apparently.
I'll tell you what, when we get the, I don't want to say substantive in the negative sense, but we get the substantive, I can turn over that copy to you, and if you tell us what you think would be best. You write lots of writs and things like that, so
I'm
whatever.
also an Oxford comma fan, so I would advocate for that too.
Okay, however you want to do
Commas
it.
bring clarity, so.
Yes,
Clarity, there's just a couple of
Commas
things
are
I'll send to you. I'll get those to
Yes,
you.
yes.
Person.
Okay, all right, and so recognize that what the last part of this will be, one will be the review then by the expert lawyers, and then the addition, be a paragraph or something to the effect on some language saying, if a book contains this sort of material and it's considered for the children's area, no, it can't, it needs to be somewhere else. That's what we're looking for from that. For example, MAD, I mean, there were things in there that we objected to. Can we put that in language that is constitutionally correct? That's what I'm looking for as an example.
I guess the question I have is, this is a collection development policy. It is a policy that the library and its staff will follow in order to develop the library's collection and call that collection as time goes on. This is more of a shelving policy.
Well, if we had, where else could we put it is the question. This is where all the action happens.
At the acquisition stage is where.
Right. I just want to make sure there's nothing else. currently
There's no other
policy.
policy that we could attach that to.
No, that has all been operationalized based on the data we've given you already about how we determine this.
Okay, well, we'll put it in here. It's one place. It's a lot better
So,
than scattering.
Because we don't currently place things based on specific content, we place them based on intended audience. So this would be, we would need to have that very specific guidance in order to do that.
Okay, so that's what we're going to try and get.
Okay. And once we have a final draft, is there time then for us to have an operational response? Just to say, here's what that would mean? Because we may
Given
need-
it's what-
I
yes.
think we've seen that.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
So this, just get the sequence right, is I'll accept everything that's in there so it's clean. Hand it over to Tiffany to put her comments in. And then Tiffany, you need to send that back as a Word document to everyone to look at. And that's the document that we'll discuss to put the final, okay, it's good except for the grammar, for the issues that you raised about the person.
And then, Anne, can you just talk us through, as we're shifting this file around in between meetings, can you talk to us us about
Oh, yes.
email, Microsoft Word, tracking changes, and the open door law.
So, as we discussed before, you were to conduct your business in public. There is a serial meeting rule that if 3 of you get together and then 2 of you get together after that, you've had a serial meeting, so majority of you have gotten together. The other thing I've told you on a very conservative basis is that there's been evolving opinions by the public access counselor on the issues of email. Because the serial meeting rule, if you go and read it, specifically says it doesn't include email. But then go and read the public access counselors and opinions, and they're evolving. And I think all of you could agree that you're violating at least the spirit of the law if you're doing your discussions online. So what I've told you is one of you can send to the whole board materials to consider. Don't do the reply all, every one of you, and start discussing it, because then I think you're having a meeting and you're not having a meeting in public. If you send, one of you sends, Ray, you send, and then Tiffany, you send, you're not commenting and you're trying to come back with a draft, for example, at your next meeting that you approve, not as a final policy EDRA, but as a draft to have the tax lawyers consider, then that is the best that you can do.
Okay, so it's okay if I do what I said I was gonna do, hand
Yes,
it
sir.
to
So you
Tiffany.
have to send it, does he send it to everybody and then I pick it up? Or is it like football,
Yeah,
like
you
first
can,
down,
you
second
can
down?
send it to everybody as, you know, for them to consider or deliberate
Okay.
on. And you can send yours for people to deliberate.
It sounds like that all has to happen fairly quickly if the lawyers are coming back next Thursday.
Well, they could come back, okay. Yes, if there's, you know, that's not set in conflict, right? I mean,
They
we can
said-
talk.
They said that they would be ready.
They said they could be ready to provide some input, but if we want to take this further to get this in near final forms, it might be better to wait and give them the near final form, and then let them have their some final say. Or are you looking just for that paragraph, the paragraph about, I'm not trying to change it.
Sure. We want their language and that they would consider usable. I don't know, we have to have our end completely.
Okay, so we're focused on that paragraph that deals with shelters.
Like there's shelving, there's also the part in there that talks about like the illustrations in books. I think as I've gone through the collection, I've looked at different things. I've seen some really great illustrations. But just understanding like the quality of the production, you know, just, I think that is a place where we can put some good guardrails, like if there's like overly gratuitous, like depictions of sex.
What is overly? I mean, I think that's where I get confused
Sure.
about implementation.
And exactly, that's why
Like,
it's
what
good to
does that,
get.
what do we mean? Do we mean any naked?
No,
This is an example.
no,
Right,
but
but that's, is it, but that's an opinion. So is it any naked? Any? I know
So
what
that's
that
what
means.
that's what I love about this conversation, because there's library science and there's building a collection and bringing in over 1,000 pieces a month. But then there's also, you know, like nobody can look in every book. So, you know, as we're getting things in, are there things that we can say, you know, if X, Y, and Z, then this, you know, and
Oh.
so like with just some guardrails and getting a legal opinion so that it's not just the opinion of, you know, 12 moms or, you know, 13 dads or, you know, something like that.
I think we got a report that indicated of all the books that we get every month for the youth 17 and under, I think there was 35 graphic novels per month. And I think it's the graphic novels is where a lot of this hang up comes from, because it does have actual sexual depiction of people having sex. in a lot of different ways. And so that's,
As a genre, so you're pointing to that genre as a whole as something we need to be worried about, or individual books?
well, since it's about 35 a month, I would think that's doable to open it up and say, well, maybe this goes in the adult section.
We would need to see that.
Okay.
And it'd be interesting to see if what they come back is to use, what's the three-prong, what's that called?
The Miller test.
It'll be interesting to see if these lawyers come back and say you need to use the Miller test, because that's where we started with it. And we did have consensus that that was going to be difficult to implement.
Yeah, I don't think that.
So-
Just another housekeeping, there's a small set on that same page where there is the proposed Carmel Clay Library. The paragraph above it has the current thing. I would take that out and replace it with just to be sure. That we look at it. All right, is there anything other housekeeping we need?
So I guess we try to get it as close to completion as we can in the next few days.
Yes.
Send that to the attorneys, have them see how they can fit it in any language that might be usable.
And to the attorneys, and I think to Edra and her staff, to tell us how that policy is going to be actually implemented, what operational impact that's going to have.
Can it be January? Our December meeting is next Thursday. I don't know if we want to just go ahead and surrender to the fact that we're not going to get it done and just push it to January. I'm fine with whatever you got. I mean, I'm here either way. So
It doesn't make sense to rush it at this point. I mean,
Pretty good.
yes, we all want to get to an end point, but with the addition of the second opinion lawyer, that adds a layer to this, and that I feel like we shouldn't rush.
Maybe we can get it done. I mean, it's just, I think we've all seen it. There's just a couple comments. Maybe we can get it over to them and get it onto the agenda for next week.
If we can get closer, then we'll try. If it doesn't work, then we'll push it.
because I'm sending the board packet out for the meeting tomorrow. So
That's fine. We can always, I mean, yeah, I love the board packet, but it gets over good before the meeting.
And you're good. You're going to send the merit page. I mean the.
yeah, we'll send John's presentation.
So
And to be clear, that merit matrix is an approach that we would take time with NFP to develop, specifically for our institution. But you'll see the example of it in his presentation.
So when the new lawyers provide the opinion, can we all receive that prior to the board meeting? Like not an hour before we walk in or morning of, but prior to like.
We'll get it as
What's that,
soon.
parking lot? Did any change there?
Yes, they should provide it to the board.
Okay, so they'll just email it direct to all of us?
That would be my.
Yeah, because I think they seemed fine with that
But-
when I asked them questions.
Since Laura has made the initial contact, can we use her as a point of contact with the law?
Of course, yes,
Okay.
if Laura, you can ask them to share their findings with all of us, that would be great, I appreciate it.
Let them know what we talked about and see what they think. what they-
Yes. In the spirit of the collaboration I was talking about earlier. Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
And then, I guess we have to review it. I want them to, I guess, kind of show their work. They say it's constitutionally defensible. I want to see the cases they're looking at. I want to be able to, I guess,
I would,
reach the buyer. So
yeah, I would like to see that
for-
too.
So again, I guess to help me understand, what is happening next week with this? Is it simply agreeing that this is your final draft you're gonna send them? Or is it sending it and expecting their opinion by next Thursday?
I think we come out of next Thursday's meeting with what we're going to give them. I don't see how,
That's a pretty.
we, in an open door appropriate manner, get to a point where we have a product with task to review internally.
That's what they're talking about.
Yeah, I can
Well,
tell you,
it's most basically, I mean, we have to do a few changes,
Yeah.
there's a few changes, minor changes. So I think that if that's the case, we'll send them. It's close to being finished. And then have them submit their information to us.
They're not here, right? Or have they left?
But, yeah.
Okay, I guess if someone showed up and said, get this to me by next week. I'd be a little.
Well, they-
But they've always done they've already done a ton of work.
They've already committed to have.
Look, yeah, the work that they do is no different. from-
It sounds so.
we used to do that all the
Okay, any other
Okay.
comments? Okay, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.